Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Okay, everybody. Listen, all the business stuff is out of the way. I think I've checked off all the right places or all the right things. Let's kick this off. Welcome to US Rugby Happy Hour Live. This is our last live show of the year. I don't know if I told Fitzy that yet, but it is. And we're ending season 3 on a high note. In just a few minutes, recently retired U.S. Eagle and former Rugby New York ironworker Nate Brakeley is going to join us. Lots to talk about, including his time as an Eagle, ending on a high note. The latest sad news, obviously, with Rugby New York no longer. But that's got a sting for Nate, too. So we'll ask him about that. And, honestly, not just sting for him, but sting for MRR fans in general. So stay tuned for that. I am Bill Baker of Eagles Overseas, and my co-host is John Fitzpatrick. Hello again.
Hello again, Bill. I can't believe we've been doing this for 3 years.
3 years. Yeah, 3 years. You know what's amazing, though? So I've been looking at numbers, okay? Like I said, last live show of the season. It's been a tremendous year, man. It's been a long year. This is our 44th live show of the year, okay?
Seriously?
Yep, which actually equals 70 podcasts out of those 44 shows, those live shows. Wow. Over 24,000 listens spread out between the Twitter spaces or Twitter replays, the podcast replays, the live streams on YouTube and Facebook and all that stuff. And that's only and that is way more than the year prior. So we're going the right direction.
So there are rugby fans in the U.S.
Maybe. But, and also, let's not forget the introduction of a new short podcast about beer, Happy Hour Tap Room. Like Dan Lyle said, who says rugby and beer goes together? So it was just natural for us to do.
The Dan Lyle guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. Who is this guy? Anyway, we want to thank everyone who's tuned in live or replayed the shows on podcasts, wherever else this year has been. We're doing it for you guys. We enjoy doing it. We love your input and all that stuff. It's been a blast being able to talk to all these great guests, like tonight's guest, and Dan Lyle, sorry, in case he's listening. And a huge thanks to Taylor Dean at USA Rugby for helping us secure many of these guests. She's been great, and communicating with her when she's been overseas in Spain and all that stuff has been outstanding. And you know what? Little quirk tonight. Well, not quirk, I guess a little addition. We're actually live streaming on Instagram, I believe. All of a sudden,
yeah.
All of a sudden, I saw it pop up on the desktop Instagram app. Said you can go live. I thought, no way. So it's great to have you guys. Whoever's listening in on the Instagram live, thank you so much for doing that. Whoever's live streaming, you can listen in on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. If you're on those three, go ahead and drop a question in the comments. We'll try to get them on for our guest tonight. If you were live on the Twitter app or on the desktop Twitter, which is new now, you can actually ask a question of our guest live yourself or message us, DM us on Twitter, and we'll get the question on for you as well. So, you know what, Fitz, let's get to it. We got a lot to talk about with our guest tonight. Right into it. He's going out on top, all right? He lifted the Vila International Cup trophy for USA. We've got none other than Eagle number 469, Nate Brakeley. Hey, Nate.
What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Again, thanks for joining us again. This is your second time, a third time you get a watch. So we'll have to work on that.
Very exciting.
So, you know what? I got to say that celebration photo over in Spain was phenomenal. I mean, blood running down your face while raising the trophy. I mean, some of the best team photos consist of players with dirt and mud all over them. You had that and the dripping blood. I mean, what a cool photo! What a cool way to cap your career, man.
Yeah, for sure. Got a little going away present from rugby there, which was nice. So I'll have that one to remember by for a while on my face. But certainly just a very fun and validating moment there. I think for everyone that's been part of that journey since we first assembled in Charlotte in July, it's been a lot of work, a lot of grind to get to that point of raising the trophy. And so to be a part of that and kind of feel the energy that I think everyone felt to reach that high at the end of the season was a pretty special moment. And then obviously, not a bad way to ride off into the sunset either.
Yeah, exactly. And let's keep on going on USA Rugby. We definitely want to talk to you about MLR, of course, in a bit, New York and all this, and your future. But, a very impressive last win there, 42-12 over Spain. Again, a very satisfying moment for you and the team. What did that win mean for you to end the season on that high?
Yeah, I think, again, it's very validating of the processes that were put in place at the beginning of that tour, and also obviously the beginning of Scott's tenure.
Yeah.
Is we built through the start of that European tour and some ups and downs there, and then to have that great Toulouse win, and then go overseas and win two away matches to lift a bit of hardware, is a pretty cool trajectory for us to be on. And a really good foundation to build what will hopefully be the next 4 years into a World Cup from. It's great momentum, it's great validation, and it's also just really good way, I think, for a lot of the young guys, or at least guys new to the Eagles, to see that kind of work reward cycle very early on, and so to remind us that if we are willing to commit and put in the graft, we can go to some pretty special places.
Yeah, Nate, and speaking of that win there, I guess maybe rephrasing the question or elaborating a bit more, how important was it for the program to really kind of win out those final 2 matches in Spain for the future of the program? We had Nate Osberger on a couple of weeks ago, and I think he said something like, winning is contagious, or winning breeds winning. For the young guys who are getting their first taste out there, what, having been in their shoes when you first came in your career, what's it like to be able to ride out a year with 2 wins, kind of get some momentum going?
100%. It's knowing how to win is a skill in itself, and I think that you've seen stretches of that with USA 2018 being the notable example, where you get on that streak and you just somehow you pull the wins out even when the playing is a little bit ugly, and I think that's a big separation between okay teams, good teams, and great teams, is how much you know how to win, and how in those tight games you know how to push through and make the adjustments that are necessary, and then mentally just having the expectation that you are going to win. And some of the very good teams that I've been a part of, it doesn't really matter what was on the scoreboard. There was always the expectation that you were going to win, versus teams where everything's a little bit more dodgy and you get behind a couple on the scoreboard and it seems insurmountable. And especially with the types of matches that USA often finds themselves in, that type of confidence in our ability to put points on the board and continue to keep ourselves in games, I think is a super valuable one.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier the physical memento maybe from the last match, a little shiner there. One thing that won't go away, of course, is the jersey, I believe, that embroidered to commemorate your last match. Have you got that bad boy framed yet?
Hasn't been framed yet, but Christmas is around the corner, so I suspect that one might be under the tree for me. But pretty special, and again, I was very privileged to kind of call the shot, as it were, on my way out. It's a pretty fortunate position to be in the rugby world, where a lot of boys, for one reason or another, don't know when they're playing their last game. And a lot of credit and thanks goes to Oscar, the manager, and obviously Scott for kind of letting me call my shot like that, and giving me a last hurrah before the next generation takes over.
And talking about Scott, at the helm, like you said earlier, for this first year and hopefully for a long while now, with him at the helm and also the impressive young guys making an impact this past year, like Sam Gola, Joe Mano, Matina, and others especially. Are we in good hands, Nate? Is US Rugby going in the right direction?
I think USA Rugby is absolutely going in the right direction. I think American rugby is best when it embraces what is American, and an easy way to do that is to have Americans at the helm and a lot of young Americans in the squad. I think that if you look at that last game especially, it's what can America produce? It can produce athletes. It loves physicality, and we aren't afraid of a bit of fitness. And so even if the skills aren't there, or the ball is going to deck for one reason or another, which you saw in the first half, there was no shortage of physicality or fitness, and we kind of pulled the game away on the back of that. And I think that Scott would tell you that those are all tenets that he looks to build his team on. And obviously, there's plenty of meat in this country to produce athletes. So just make sure that those boys are getting into the system early, they're getting identified, they're getting developed. and so that the Sam Gallas of the world are found early and put into systems where they can become Eagles.
And speaking of the meet, anyone this past year, say, or whenever here, that's really kind of blown you away by just the skills they have. McCarthy comes over, also joining Chicago. His kind of skill level he's learned over in Ireland. Anyone out there that you're just like, wow, that kid's got it.
Yeah, I think so obviously the internationals that have come over, Tomo and Nick have been great boons to the squad. Obviously Sam Gall has gone well, Paddy Ryan coming over, and then all the young boys as well. I mean, it's just been really good to see a lot of new faces in the squad, and knowing that those boys are also getting the reps at their MLR clubs as well. Means that we aren't having flash in the pan guys come in and look great and then kind of disappear into clubland like it might have been in the past. There's a real pathway for the boys that want to commit to this to continue to develop.
And, staying in line with the U.S., now back to the coaching staff again with Scott, what is it about Scott? I know being American, knowing the landscape really helps out. But, what's different with him compared to, say, Gary or John Mitchell? And I'm not trying to separate him as, like, who's better. I'm just saying, what's the difference?
Yeah, so I think on field, I think Scott has actually a similar philosophy, again, to Mitch, that was let's build athletes and teach them to play rugby. Under Mitch, we were running our faces off and just, playing a rapid, high pace, and daring teams to keep up with us. I think Scott has put a bit more guardrails on that, but it's the same idea of we're going to be fitter and more athletic and more physical than you. Hang with us if you can, and use that as kind of an identity for the team. I think Scott also, obviously, from a pathways, framework, kind of systems guy, obviously he's been in the country and obviously thinking about this for a long time, as to how do we develop the youth teams, the age grade teams, the support systems, the identification vehicles, such that this Eagles team isn't we aren't building just for 4 years. We're trying to build a pipeline that will sustain us for the next 2, 3, 4 World Cups.
And you just mentioned youth, academies, that kind of stuff. One of our listeners, Rick Meyer, I hope it says his last name right. He's on Facebook, and he wrote a comment saying his son's 12. He loves the game of rugby. There are rugby camps all over the U.S., but it seems to not be a lot of youth camps geared towards his age. There's plenty of high school and college camps. Can there be more done to grow the sport among the 10 to 14-year-olds? And you have an opinion on that? I'm not sure how deep you are into that realm.
Yeah, I'm not too much into that. I started playing when I was in high school, so freshman year in high school, so I would have been 14 or 15. But, I think at that age, a lot of it is just exposure to the sport. If you look at the number of guys historically in the U.S. that have done great, only having picked up the game in college or after, I really think at those ages, it is just about exposure to the sport and having fun with it and staying excited about it. We always talk about cross training and is specialization early too much? And so I don't know what the perfect way to develop as a rugby player is. But as long as you have it in your area and you're playing it with some consistency, I would say that's all you really need, and kind of early on there.
Well, and then talk about yourself personally, Nate. We talked about this last time in the show. We're relatively neighbors. You growing up in Marblehead, I'm up in the street from you in Manchester by the sea. St. John's Prep, you were a prep kid. What was your involvement in youth rugby?
Yeah, so I picked it up in high school. I'd never really heard of it until it was there, and I needed something to do in the spring, and so I picked it up and fell in love with it. But that was kind of my first exposure to it, and then since then, I've obviously been around it, especially in New York City with all the play rugby and the visiting of things through Rooney. But I know that it's still fairly very much kind of pockets of it around the country, and it's one of those things that there needs to be kind of adults that are very passionate about it to put in place the systems for kids. It's not like soccer where these things just kind of are everywhere. And so there definitely is some element of it that you just kind of have to be fortunate that it's in your area when you're looking for a sport to play. And, you know, there's somebody that wants to teach you it.
Nate, I want to switch gears here a little bit and move to MLR and talk a little bit about New York. Of course, everyone has heard the news soon after the Arrows ceased Rugby New York to bow out of the league. I mean, that's got to hurt a little bit, right? The kind of the organization that you played with in MLR, unfortunately, had to shut it down.
Yeah, more than a little bit. It's gutting, frankly. Primarily for all the boys that thought they had employment and thought they were going to be able to provide for their families for the next 6 months to a year, are suddenly scrambling for probably pennies on the dollar in terms of contracts in cities that they may not want to be in, away from where they thought they're going to be. And if they got kids and significant others in tow, they're even worse off for it. And so, that's been feeling for those boys a lot. Obviously I got out at the right time, as it were. But that's super tough. And then from we're just talking with Butcher the other day, and we were always saying that in 10, 15 years, we'll be able to take our kids and show them the house that Dad built. And that's not a thing anymore. So there's a lot of kind of memories and legacy and hard work from the start of Mike Petrie and James Kennedy through to this past season that is kind of washed out a bit. And we can get as philosophical as you like about it's about the mates and the memories, but at the end of the day, there's something that we thought we were building that's not quite there anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely a big void and a big loss for MLR, and of course all the players and staff and families. I mean, I guess from let us know how much you can tell here, but did you hear anything leading up to this? Was there an inkling that the 2024 season wasn't going to happen for New York?
I think everyone knew that there were going to be changes. There was announced sale of the team. But I don't think that there was any real feeling that the club was at risk of not being a club. There's certainly a bit of egoism too about it being New York, and thinking that New York isn't going to go anywhere. That even if it hits the fan, something's going to happen to step in and save us. But clearly not the case. So I think it was a pretty big shock, except for all of those that were in the know.
Yeah, and you mentioned having some conversations with Dylan Fawcett, who now is going to be playing with the Chicago Hounds. But have you had any other conversations with some of your other teammates? And if so, what are kind of some of these general emotions that are swirling around? Is it fear, doubt, anger?
I think everyone's going through their own grieving process. It's again a lot of what we just described is. Mm-hmm. What those boys were feeling is if you're running your club right, it is more than just 4 walls and a couple of rugby balls. And I think New York did a really good job of making it more than that. So to see it disappear is a lot like watching your house burn down. There's a lot of memories that were there. And so, of course, I've reached out to the boys and chatted with a bunch of them, and hoping and trying to help where I can get some of the boys to land on their feet. Because again, it's a lot of guys left in the lurch at a very late hour.
Yeah, but Nate, again, obviously you're extremely proud of New York Rugby. You played there at club level also, and I get it. It's a great environment. Is there a way to look at it where maybe New York City wasn't ready for an MLR team yet? What I mean by that is, you just weren't able to find a home every year. Attendance numbers weren't where you wanted them to be, but that takes time, obviously. Is it maybe not time? I know, honestly, financials were an issue, but maybe it hopefully will happen again, and New York will be ready for it.
Listen. I would say that everything they say about New York City is right. Is you got to want to make it here. I think New York City it's the right time in New York City for the right people all the time. Mm-hmm. And it didn't happen this time. It didn't come to the end that we wanted it to, but I don't think at all that's an indictment of New York City or of the New York City rugby scene. I just think that it was the execution was not there. And will rugby be back in New York City? Yeah, absolutely. There's too much enthusiasm and love for the sport here. And, and also let's call a spade is, us coming in and wearing the uniforms and calling ourselves professional is one aspect of it. But the rugby scene in New York City is still very strong. And there's still a lot of people that do it for free and put on great tournaments and clubs and run the scene for free because they love the sport. And so that's not going anywhere. And so, we're mourning the loss of our thing, but the rugby community writ large is still there.
Right. And you mentioned, actually, a quick question for you. Have you heard any insight on today's dispersal draft?
I just seen I've just seen little bits and pieces there, and I know that all those boys need to work out their contracts. So until I see the Instagram post, I'm not going to believe anything I read.
Yeah, I believe you there. But I mean, it's good to see the Butcher landing with Chicago. I know these players here like Bonasso and Sam Windsor going back to Seattle. I mean, these are all free agents. Not having to worry about the draft. But it seems like, looking back in the offseason, you would have thought these guys would have been signed up if everything was right in the front office in New York. But I mean, we can speculate all we want, obviously, for forever, not knowing exactly what happened. But it's not good, Nate. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like the team's done, you're done, and it sucks for other teams also. Like me up here in New England, we love that rivalry between New York and New England. DC also loved playing against New York. Many teams, and so it's a huge void. Are these the younger players? I mean, is this the same thing? Kind of what happened with Austin and LA, pretty much the same way. I mean, is it the general feeling MLR is doing almost the same thing, just kind of like, here, just go, and this is why we need a players union?
Yeah, I mean, I think the players union is a good finish to that. This is part of why we need a players union, is because even owners with the best intentions, and if we give them full benefit of the doubt, still need money, and sometimes that money dries up, and then where are people left? And so that's kind of where some of that protection element needs to come in. Are there differences between New York, Toronto, and Austin and LA? Yeah, I'd say absolutely. But at the end of the day, you had more or less sole source of money that disappeared, and then there was nothing to fall back on.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the league is a business, and they need to look at the balance sheet and decide the pros cons of propping this up somehow or cutting and running. And we as professionals are part of that business, and so we're just part of that sometimes, and it sucks.
Now, I want to move on. Let's talk a little bit about what's
let's get away from that.
What's ahead for you? And I think there was something you said earlier that kind of resonated with me. I thought that was pretty powerful. And you said something about how you kind of were able to decide and maybe go out on your own terms. And I think you said something like some guys don't know when they may be playing their last game, which is definitely some powerful stuff there. But let me ask you about retiring from the game. Would you say it's a bit of relief, reluctant retirement? Did you feel like you accomplished everything you kind of set out to accomplish on a rugby pitch?
I would say I accomplished everything I set out to do. I would say that I retiring at a time when I feel that I'm playing my best rugby and could have probably gotten another year out of myself. And I'd say that's the exact right time to retire. I've, especially as my play style, I've never particularly been the fastest or the most athletic, and I don't want to be hanging around until I'm very clearly not the fastest or most athletic. So I'm pretty happy to go out where I feel like I'm contributing in the way I want to be contributing, and vaguely healthy again, versus having all that chosen for me by injury, by selection, by what have you.
So you're telling me you've run your last Bronco test for your career?
I'm sure I'll get talked into one at some point, but I'm certainly done running Bronco on somebody else's time. Yeah.
You've been balancing. It's well known that you've been balancing, work life and rugby life for some long time now. Even before you got your first cap, for the Eagles. Was it just time, maybe, I guess, to concentrate on that part of the career or your new career?
No, I mean, frankly, like I've made the balance work, and would have continued to make it work. This was a purely rugby decision. Obviously, my wife and my family weighed into this, but as she's been unequivocally supportive through all this and made it very clear that if I wanted another year, I could take another year. But this was the right time for me. My plan was actually to hopefully go out, with the last World Cup, which didn't work out. But it was another year. I got nothing left to prove to myself, really, is what it comes down to. I've hit the highs that I've wanted. I've made the best mates in the world. I've traveled the world. Another year would just be a bit more arthritis and probably a couple more head knocks that I don't need. So I'm pretty pleased to step out as I have.
Well, this next question you're probably going to see from a mile away, and probably, like the scrum half that's setting up for the box kick. Everyone knows it's coming. Is this really officially the end of your playing days? And let me ask, this is just wild and irresponsible speculation on my part here, but if the Free Jacks say they gave you a call in May and June and said, "Hey, Nate, we need you for a couple of months."
Hey, listen, week 12 attrition.
He didn't say no.
He didn't say no. No, but he did stop talking, so I think that I'll take that as a sign to continue on. So Nate, more seriously, you've made. I read an interview or listened to an interview you gave recently where you're talking about maybe getting a little more involved in coaching at the collegiate level. Do I have that right? Is that potentially a full-time pursuit for you?
That was thrown out there as a potential. I'm not sure that full-time coaching is in the near-term cards. I mean, frankly, I look at the amount of work that those guys do and it's a lot. And it's hard to, I've sacrificed so much to play the sport, to sacrifice even more time to coach the sport, I think is probably not something that's in the near term. But I'm also don't see a world in which I step away from the sport entirely. I love coaching when I've done it, in a drop-in basis. I love being around the sport and the boys, the ones I know and the ones I just meet. And I also have a lot of strong ties to Dartmouth still. So that's a pretty easy connection there to drop in and hang out with those boys from time to time. So I feel like I still got a lot to give back to the game. At what level and in what capacity, that remains to be seen. Well, don't be surprised when you see me on a sideline at some point.
Especially with the connection with Alex Magleby and the Free Jacks. So we'll go back to that question again. No, never mind. I won't ask you. Well, you mentioned an involvement with coaching, and I'm glad you asked that, Fitzy, because, obviously we all know the World Cup's coming up in a number of years right now. I mean, you're a smart guy, Nate. You went to Cambridge. Do you foresee maybe throwing your name in the hat to help out, maybe with plans for the Rugby World Cup?
Do you mean in a support or a coaching role?
Support maybe. As a rugby mind, support. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not thought too hard about any of that. Being involved in the scene is definitely appealing in one capacity or another. And to be part of the World Cup on the other side would probably be a really cool experience as well. But I got 4 years to figure that out. So I guess I don't have anything too concrete right now.
All right, so I'm going to have to take a breath. I'm going to list off a few things here. I'm probably going to have to take a break and breathe because there's so many things here. We're looking back now at your career. 34 caps for the Eagles. You won the ARC championship, the VLA International Cup recently. There we go. The MLR Shield. Participated in the World Cup we mentioned earlier, and you played in that historic varsity match at Twickenham. 50 plus MLR matches. That's a lot, Nate. Pretty impressive rugby accomplishments. You said earlier you've reached all the goals you went for going into the game, but was there anything out there maybe you wish you could have done? I don't know, got back in the sevens, USA sevens or something?
A sevens cap would have been pretty silly, but it would have been cool. World Cup win would have been nice. Yeah. But I'm just listing off nice to haves now.
Yeah.
I've got nothing but gratitude for the sport of rugby. So Do I have any regrets or any things I wish had happened? Absolutely not.
Nice.
Nate, were you ever approached about playing overseas, professionally?
Not in any concrete capacity. So the reason I went to Cambridge was I knew I wanted to get a master's anyways, and doing that over at Cambridge was kind of my exposure to overseas rugby and just kind of a two birds with one stone way of getting over there. And while I was over there, kind of saw the level and saw where I was at. And realized at that point in my career, I'd probably be slogging it out in the championship or Nat 1 and grinding my way up. And that just wasn't particularly appealing to me at that point in time, which is why I came back here and started working. So basically realized that it was going to be a hell of a grind over there, and to reach my eventual goal of playing for the Eagles, I could do that via NIAC at the time, and so that's where that decision came from.
Nate, we're going to wrap it up here in a second. What now for you? What are your plans, immediate plans? Are you just chilling, not working out at all? Maybe putting on a little gut, I don't know, sitting on the couch.
Speak for yourself, Bill.
Well, yeah, I've been doing that since I quit. What's now for you, Nate?
Well, I've been trying to sit on the couch, but my wife has reminded me that she is not retired, and so we are in the gym and at the track. So she's keeping me in shape. But yeah, I mean, into my day job, into reminding my employers why they give me a paycheck from time to time, and again, trying to stay in touch with the game and figure out what that next step looks like. Very excited to watch the growth of this crazy thing called the MLR, even with the road speed bumps.
Yeah.
But it's going to be an exciting next chapter here. And as I'm only, 4 weeks into it, still got some figuring out to do here.
Nice.
Nate, I don't, speaking of, you mentioned kind of getting out on the track, maybe that's doing some laps. One of your USA men's Eagle teammates, Christian Dyer, just ran a marathon, his first one, down in Dallas. I think it was last weekend. So now that you've got some extra free time, maybe on some fall Saturdays to do some long runs, is there a marathon in your future?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have enough TikTok followers to propel me around the track.
Again, not a no. All right, Nate, we'll leave you on that one, but you should think about it. Anyway, listen, Nate Brakeley, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and the last show we had you on there, and it's been a pleasure for all of us to watch you in the USA uniform, especially going out the way you did, making all the USA Rugby fans proud of those wins in Spain and in Utah, that type of stuff, man. Nate, good luck in the future.
Thanks, man, and thanks, fellas, for everything you do for rugby. I know you have fun with this, but it is important that people put on shows like this, so it's great that you're putting in these efforts.
Thank you, man. That's our tease right there, Fitzy. All right, Nate, have a good one.
Yeah, cheers, fellas.
All right, Fitzy, that was, wow. Again, another show where we could easily go another 30 and just talk more and more and more. What a good guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great way to close out an awesome year of doing this. 2023 has been 44 shows. That number blows me away.
It does. 44 shows. What was it? 70 podcasts out of this, not counting the beer podcasts. And if you're listening in, guys, still check out the Happy Hour Tap Room. It's a quick little fun segment we do about beer. Yeah, it's been a great year. And you look at some of the names we had on this year. With Nate right there, and then you dig into all the coaches. Mike Friday, Scott Lawrence a couple times. Gary Gold, I think, was at the no, that was last year probably. Anyway, all these, and I love they're just not like, all right, I'll be on your show. No, it's like, yeah, let's talk, man. I mean, Patty Ryan was great. David Anu'u, even though David pretended not to hear me for a while. And then the women's rugby, Rachel Johnson, Mata Hengano on her first cap, have her on the show from, where were they, in Spain? No, they were I forget where they were, but they were definitely over there also. So just some great people that came on this year, and it's just been awesome.
Well, I mean, it's like, how do you top that for 2024? So we're going to have to step it up. I mean, we almost went live, I think, every week. Can we go live every single week in 2024? I don't know. We'll see.
Let's find that sponsor to make it possible. I am working on guests already to up the game. I'm working on all future leaders, world leaders that played rugby. So we have Gandhi, George Bush, President Clinton. I mean, we'll never get them, but you know what the hell? It's worth a try. All right, buddy. Listen, it's been fun. It's been a good year. We're gonna come up with new ideas for all the listeners. It's been a blast, and who knows, we may be on a different platform come January or so. So stay tuned, everybody. It's been great. Thank you so much for tuning in and help in making this happen. If it wasn't for you, honestly, I don't know if Fitzy and I would be doing it all the time like this, 70 shows, but we are. Anyway, have a great night, and we'll see you again soon.